Hi everyone, welcome to another session of Stella Bootcamp. So Stella Bootcamp is run by the Stella East Africa community and the Hadao Global community. My name is IJ. I'm currently volunteering as a steward at the Hadao Kenya, and I'm very happy to have all of you here. And without further ado, let's kick off the session. Welcome, Ayo.
Thank you so much, ID. We'll continue our class from where we stopped. So I'll start by sharing my screen. Yeah. So based on our previous class, we ended by going back to talk about compound types. So we ended yesterday class by talking about tuples, arrays, and vectors. But apart from that, is there anyone, as usual, who is willing to give us heads up or give us more like a refresher as to what was discussed in class? Anyone? Yes, Stephanie.
So good afternoon, Ayo.
Good afternoon, Stephanie.
In your last class, we spoke about ownership, reference, and then compound data type. In the ownership, what I understood is that each variable owns, each variable owns a value. So for you to use that value without taking ownership, you can borrow it by using the ampersand sign. And then for you to change or manipulate the first, the owner of the value, you need to make it to be mutable. Then we also spoke about that there was one example or a question you asked me yesterday that when a value is being borrowed and has not been consumed, the original owner cannot use the value. So before the original owner can use the value, we have to consume it first. So the one borrowing it has to consume it so that it can be returned, and then the original value can use it. Then we spoke about compound types like
No,
vector.
not that part. Confused. So that it's not that it has to be returned completely, but the original owner to move the ownership. Remember that example that I showed you, it was a function that was taking up the ownership from that value. So it's when if let me go back to it. Where do we have it? Yeah, this function was taking up the ownership, but here we had it here because where did we do that? Okay, yeah, because
Yes.
this was still borrowing it, the function cannot take up the ownership. The value from here can still be used by the original owner, just that it cannot transfer what the ownership. Did you get that?
Yes, I understand.
Okay, great. You can continue, please.
Then we spoke about compound data types, we spoke about vectors, tuples, and arrays. You said that vectors are not fixed data type. They are not a fixed data type, so they are dynamic in nature, meaning that we have to use the mute keyword so that we can add and remove items from it. So you must define the data type you want, if it's I32, if it's U32, if it's a Boolean or any other data type. Then we have tuple. Tuple, you can combine different data types together, like your I32 bool and string. Then we have array. Array must be fixed, like e.g. let array one equals to, you define the data type, then how many items you want, and then you put the item in a square bracket. Yes,
Great.
that's all.
Great. You see, if we were to grade your answer, it definitely would be 110 over 100 because you did a very great job. Thank you so much for that summary. That literally covers what we discussed from yesterday, moving from the ownership to references, borrowing, and then back to compound types. Today, we'll be talking about something new. Thank you so much, Stephanie. We'll be talking about something new. We're talking about enums and structs. This was the original reason why I wanted us to go back to the compound types we were talking about yesterday, because it won't be wise for us to skip that and then move to a different custom type, enum and struct, without talking about it. Now, this is what an enum look like in Rust. So an enum, you can define enum as a custom data type that allows you to create what we call a variant. So for example, let's say you are working with something that deals with traffic lights. You could come and create an enum and say traffic. Am I getting the spelling wrong? So for traffic, you could have red, you could have yellow, and you could have green. I mean, these are the colors of traffic light, right? So this is what an enum basically looks like. But before we even consume this enum or look at how to use an enum, now we'll be talking about two specific enums that comes from the standard Rust library. What are those? I'll comment this out. Those two enums, they are called the result enum and what? And the option enum. Now, what is a result enum? A result enum is basically used to get a category of two different data. What am I talking about? This means that every time when you write your code or you create a function, there are certain situations whereby you might expect an error to come up. You might not be sure about what would come up in your code. For example, let's say you're writing a backend application, or in fact, a front-end application, and you are consuming an API, for example. Now, you are not sure if the API is going to return something, or the API is not going to return anything, or it's probably going to return an error. How do you handle this situation? You could use a result enum. How do you do that? Now, we are going to create an example. A vivid example we like to create or use is a function that does something simple to divide two numbers. Now, based on our previous knowledge of mathematics, we know that if you divide anything by 0, it is undefined. So let's say you divide 1020 by 0, it's undefined. Divide anything by 0. I mean, it's not possible to divide something by 0. So mathematically, you would say it is what? It is undefined. Now, in this case, how would you want to create a function that has to handle a scenario whereby you are trying to divide something, and at the end of the day, what you are dividing it by is undefined. Now, the Rust compiler would react to it. In fact, the Rust compiler will panic and at this point terminate the execution of the code. In the result enum. Now let's create the function. Now, by now, we all should be accustomed to what a function looks like and how to create a function, right? So this is it. So now this time we are going to create a function and we are going to handle a scenario whereby the denominator of this fraction, because at the end of the day, 120 over 0, it's more like a fraction, and the denominator here is 0. So we are going to handle a situation whereby the denominator is 0, but also in other situations, it's possible that the denominator is not 0. So what do we do in that case? Let's do that. We'll be using a result enum. So we'll be calling our function divide. So what will our function be doing? It will be dividing an I32 by an I32. And in this case, we are going to return a result. So naturally, what we could have returned would have been I32 in this case. But then we don't want to return an I32 because we want to handle a situation whereby our denominator, which in this case is B, is actually what? 0. So in that case, we are going to use what we call a result enum. So for the result enum, it's going to have an I32, and it's also going to have a string. A string. So what is this string going to be? This string is going to be the order value, which is what? The error that comes up. Now, this I32 is going to be an okay value. So the I32 is an okay value if certain conditions are met. Now, in our case, what conditions are we looking to be met when we are dealing with our division? We are looking at the fact that we want to ensure that B is not a 0. But then, if B is a 0, if B is equal to 0, what should we do? Immediately, we want to return an error. What should the error be? The error is then what? This string. So it's going to be string from number not divisible by 0. So now, I think it's always beautiful and nice if we actually tried doing it without handling this error. So what we are going to do now is I'm going to create two functions basically. The first one, divide. The second one, I'll name it divide one. You know, I love adding one or whatever number at the back. And then the other one, I'm not going to undo a situation whereby we are trying to divide by 0. And then we are going to see the difference between those two. We are going to look at our terminal here, and we are going to see how the Rust compiler reacts to these two different functions. So let's do that. So for this one else, we want to say, okay value, A divided by B. And then we are good to go. So this is going to be what we'll be using to experiment our result enum. The next thing we want to do is we want to create a function divide one. Now, what divide one does is literally the same thing. I32, and then we're going to return an I32 basically. And what we are going to do is just do the division. We say A divided by B. And we are just going to return it. We want to remember that I have made mention of us always trying to write a clean code. And that's why I'm not going to do this to what we are doing. Yes, this works too, but I mean, this looks beautiful than the other one. So we are going to leave it like this. So this function and this function, are they going to do the same thing? What's making this function a better function than this function? Let's see. Let's find out. First of all, I'm going to comment all of this out. We've spoken about vectors. I'm going to comment all of this out too. And even the main function. So I'm going to create a new main function. And yep, I'm going to create it here. So now we have the main function. So let's try our first function, divide one. So I'm going to try divide one, and we're going to see what would happen. So let's say we're trying to divide something and say, let's call it our result. So our rest is divide 1. And we're going to divide 10 by 0. Or let's start by dividing 10 by something normal. Let's see the result. So we are going to first print the result. And yeah, we're going to say the result is, let's add this and then add the results. So let me clear the terminal and everything is fine. Okay, so let's run our code. Cargo run, and then let's see. Can we see? The result is 5. That's correct. We are happy. Everyone goes home happy, right? That's because 10 divided by 2 is actually 5. So everyone goes happy. But what if we change 2 to 0 in this case? And then we run our code. Cargo run. Let me clear this before running it. It's nice when your terminal is cleared and everyone can see what's going on. So let's run it, cargo run. Can you see? Can you see what happened? The main thread panicked at our file, attempt to divide by 0. Can you see? Note, run the backtrace so you can what? You can discover or display a backtrace. This is what? This is our code telling us that it panicked and it what? It did not compile. Now, can you see this sign? This sign shows that it exited the code. Can you see? Can you see? Command exited. Command executed 40 seconds, took 1.476 seconds, and failed. That's because we tried doing something that was not possible. Now, the Rust compiler is intelligent enough to know that, okay, it is a generally known knowledge that any number divided by 0 is undefined. And that's why it could tell us this error, attempted to divide by 0. Can you see? But in a situation whereby the Rust compiler does not know the software you are building, so it does not know the error it should be expecting, what would it do? It will just terminate. It would panic and terminate the program. But at that particular time, you will just notice that your program is terminating without you having an error. So there's no error handling in the sense that you have nothing to gyrate back to solve the issue because you have not handled the error. And so how do you handle that error? By using a result enum. So this result enum is basically going to accept an OK value if there's no error, or it's going to return a string. Now, there are different ways of returning an error. Now, the way I did this one is for me to just create, a string to return my error. You can even create an enum of errors. So you can create an enum of errors where the enum will be filled with different types of error. For example, you can create enum, custom error. You can name it custom errors or errors. And you can start by saying this not divisible by 0, string not. You see, you can keep on creating so many different types of error based on your program, and then you keep returning all of these errors basically. But in this case, we are just going to use a string for the use of this exercise, so we can cover what we want to cover. So right now, we are going to comment this out, and then we are going to try out our function divide, where we actually what handled the error. So divide, let's say 12 by 2. Let's see what it gives to us. So print. No, not this print. Print. And then I want to say the result is I add this and I add my res. Now, the result is this. Okay, good. Did anyone notice that I added this column and question mark at the middle? Yes, I did that because I'm trying to print out something dynamic. It's dynamic in the sense that we do not know the exact data we are expecting. But then after we print this, I'm going to show us something different. Now, Rust is a very interesting language, trust me. So let me cargo run this. Now I've cargo run it, and yes, 12 divided by 2 is what? Is 6. And it is correct. But this time, notice that it's saying the result is okay into brackets 6. So it's taking in okay with the parentheses and it's putting 6 at the middle. Now, we don't want our result to tell us, okay, 6. We want to extract this 6 from it. Now, there are different ways of extracting that 6 from it, right? Now, one way to do it is by us actually using a particular method that is associated with the result enum, which is what? Unwrap. So we could use unwrap. And if we unwrap it and we call this, it's going to what? It's going to tell us that the result is what? The result is 6. Everyone is happy and everyone goes home. Yes. But what is the issue with using unwrap? The issue with using unwrap is that whenever there is a problem, it panics. Whenever what it is unwrapping is not an okay value, it panics. And the same thing eventually happens when we are dealing with what? When we are dealing with a result. Now imagine this is unwrapping an okay value. But then imagine we are expecting an error. How do you unwrap an error? That doesn't make sense, right? That's why it's important that you are careful when you are using the unwrap what? The unwrap method. Instead, you could also use unwrap or, and then you add whatever you want to add to it. So if it's unwrap and it's trying to unwrap something that's not there, this unwrap or is going to use this as the default if it's unable to unwrap the okay value. Now that is one. But what is the professional way of doing this? Anyways, before we move on to the professional way of doing it, let's try to change our value from 12 divided by 2 to 12 divided by 0. And this time around, we are not unwrapping anything. We are going to leave our results like this. And then let's clear this and we would cargo run. Can we see? Can we see? The result is an error. Number not divisible by 0. Now, the code did not panic. Can we see? It did not panic or exit. Rather, the code executed and it returned the error that we gave to it. Number not divisible by 0. Here's the error we gave to it. Number not divisible by 0. And that is exactly why it is important that a situation whereby we are expecting an error, we'll deal with this error or handle this error by using the result enum. Now, before I proceed, is there anyone who has a question based on everything we've just spoken about for result enums? Okay. We have Stephanie and Miracle. Let's hear from Miracle first. Okay, we also have Benjamin. So, but let's hear from Miracle first. You can unmute your mic, please.
Okay. Good everyone.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know if you can come again on the Enum, this and like iterate over it again. Don't mind.
Okay, that's your question. Okay.
Mm.
Stephanie, let's hear from you.
So you said that the unwrap method is not the best way to unwrap
Yes,
Enum. So what is the best way?
we are getting there. I just wanted us
Okay.
to understand to this point before we get there. Yes, Benjamin.
Yes, please, I joined late, but then I sort of got something. Yeah, so I think when you were talking about is it the custom enum or something like that? Yeah, yeah, like when you create custom enums, it's like it's actually good to have all our errors uh, at one place, right? But then I was thinking if Rust is known for its speed and its way of managing space of storage, right? Once that's also like one way or the other, you make whatever that you are running slow, or like slow is relative. So like we want it to make it slow in a way.
I've not gotten your question though.
Okay, so please can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, so I was saying I sort of joined late, but then I got something. But you um, made mention that it is good for us to, or we can create custom enums where like we can have our errors in like in one space, right? Or like in a one container, for lack of better expression, right? So I was sort of asking, right, that since Rust is known for its storage management, right, and speed, won't like in considering that won't it like make whatever that you're loading a bit slow, since also slow is relative. Like, yeah,
Won't it
that's
make
my question.
what I'm trying to build slow? You
Yeah,
mean
like
using
whatever that's yeah, like using like that customized and all and stuff like that, having all your errors at one place. Like, won't it also take another space like that to, since we are trying to uh manage
no,
space?
no, it won't. No, it
Oh,
won't. It's just like having a collection of tools that you are using. Now, if you have a list of errors, it means that you are expecting different types of errors as you are building your software or your application. So you can keep using the different enums where they are needed. So for each functions, imagine you have about 5 different functions you are building. And for the out of these 5 functions, you have two that you probably expect a certain type of error. In fact, in just one function, you can expect more than one type of error inside of it. But then using the enum for errors, you can basically do what? Handle the different errors coming from it. So if time permits us, because I really don't want us to eat into our time, if time permits us, I'm going to create some list of functions and I'm going to create a custom error and show us how that is being used for custom errors instead of using a string. Because just one function could have like 4 different types of error that could come from it. And all of this has to be handled. All of this has to be taken care of. So that's it. So going back
thank you.
to um let's undo Miracle's question before Stephanie. So Miracle wants us to talk about the results enum all over again. And he wants us to talk about how to deal with it. So now, Miracle, I made an illustration of, or it's a scenario whereby the code is meant to return an error, whether we like it or not. And the scenario I used was a scenario where we had to divide a number by 0. Now, mathematically, we know if you divide a number by 0, you would have undefined because you cannot divide a number by nothing. So mathematically, it is undefined. But if you perform the same action in your program, it's going to panic and it's going to exit the code. And I demonstrated it when I used this this other function divide underscore 1, where I divided the number by 0 and it panicked and it exited the code. Yeah, let's try it again. So let's comment out all of this and let's uncomment this. So I'm going to clear this and I'm going to run the code. As we can see, I'm trying to divide 10 by 0. Let's see what happened. Can you see? The code exited. The main thread panicked at what? At line 118. Where is line 118? Yeah, where we are trying to divide what? 10 by 0. It's panicked. And if you look at this place, you see it exited. It took 2.741 seconds and failed. It exited the code. In this case, how can we handle a situation? Imagine you are creating a function that is to be used. You cannot control what users do, but you can control how to react to what they do. And in this case, that is why you can try to handle an error based on what? Based on using a result enum. And with this result enum, we created the same function here. Now, I made mention that a result have an okay value and an error. Now, in fact, I'm going to go into this result and we are going to see what it looks like. Can you see? It's an enum. It's an enum result, but then it has what we call a generic. Two generics, in fact. It have a generic for the okay value and then a generic for the error. Now, I did not want to open this because I did not want to even talk about generics because we've not done anything that would lead us to generics. But then just understand that this is the okay value and then it wraps in the result in this generic. But in a simple sense, we spoke about Rust being a typed language, but then what if there are some cases or scenarios whereby we don't know what is going to come in? We need in that scenario to use a generic. And this is the exact situation. Can we see a generic? In this case, yeah, this okay value, this result here is an I32. So this I32 is represented by what? By this T, which is what? A generic. In this case, we have error here, but then we don't know what is coming in for this error. So what is represented by this string that we are using for this error? Remember, I said it could even be what? An enum. But in this case, what is handling this situation from it not being a deterministic value? It is what? A generic. What's the generic here? E. Can we see it? So it's an enum. It's just like the normal enum, public enum results, and it has an okay and an error. So it's just like this. This public is to make it a public variable. Enum, and we have results, and inside of it, we have an okay, and this okay, in this case, we are going to make our own I32, and then we have an error. In this case, it's a string. This is basically what this is. And now there's going to be a problem, obviously. Obviously, yes, there's going to be a problem because we are trying to create something that has already been created that already has a generic. So I'm going to remove it. So that is that on results enum. So in this particular case, we've been able to see that we undo the results by either having an error or an okay value. Now, we are able to use it here. So when we call our function to divide by 0 and we run the code, clear, and we run the code cargo run, we basically have what? We have the results delivered. Can we see? The result is delivered. So did you get that miracle?
Yes, I did. But I have one more question, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Okay, that Enum, is it a class?
Is it a what?
A class or something?
No, it is not. It is not.
Okay.
Now, when you are talking of class, that means you have knowledge from other programming language like Python, JavaScript, right?
Yes, yes. So I've been seeing Enum, sometimes, and I think I want to believe that Enum there stands for enumerator. If I'm wrong, correct me.
I didn't get that, please.
I said, I've come across the word, Enum, that's uh, phenomena Enum, in some programming languages I've used. And I want to believe Enum means enumerator or something. If I'm
No.
wrong, correct me. Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, did you just say enumerator?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, it is basically something like that now. That is it. It gives
Okay.
you opportunity to choose from an option,
Okay.
enumerate an option.
Okay.
Like the example I gave here for this result that we are using here, it has
Mm,
an option of okay and an error. So, and you
mm,
can enumerate through different options. That's literally it.
okay.
I also gave example of traffic light somewhere here. Yes, you are enumerating through either red, yellow, green. Now, the beautiful thing about Enum is that it can also take custom values apart from it. It can take a compound custom value. It can even take something like this, name, I-32, age,
Mm,
I-32. I'll change this one to string. I mean, why would your name be a number unless you're a prisoner? So yeah, it can take something like this too. So it's an enum. You can enumerate through these options. Yes, it
yeah.
is. So you are correct. Yes, yes, it is. So
Thank you.
yes, I hope that has really answered you. Now going back to Stephanie, how can we handle this better? In fact, I had already written out the solution here. The solution is using a match. Yes. Now, what does this match does? The match literally is a syntax that compares. You can think of match when you think of something like if else. So match is used to compare just one value with different scenarios. What do I mean by that? Now look at what we have here. I'm going to comment this out. Okay, let me create this. Yeah, I'm going to bring this down. So let's look at what we have here. Now, what we have here, we created this divide, and then as we can see here, it's giving us a result enum with I-32 and a string. Now, we could use the match keyword to match whether it's an okay or an error. Then we consume the result here. Now, don't be deceived by this res. This res is not the same thing as this res, right? But this res is the value if the result is an okay value. So we can change this one to result, and then we change this one to result so we don't confuse them. So it's the same thing basically. You can change this one to error, but you have to change this one to error. So it's the same thing basically. So you are matching this result because this result is either one of these two. So you're matching it with either an okay value or an error. And then you do what? You consume it here. You consume the result. Did you get that? Stephanie, did you get that?
Yes, I got it.
So how do we put it
So
into play? This time I'm going to cargo run, and we are going to see the difference between what we had earlier. Can you see? This time we are not having error into brackets. We are not having error into brackets, number not divisible by 0. But this time we have removed that ERR into bracket. This time we have handled that error efficiently. Now we have customized it and even added error in front, and then we destructured out the error that was inside of this error enum, and then we brought it out here and we added this error in front of it basically and printed it out. And between this one and let me bring this back to its position. And this one, which one looks better? Between this one and where's the other one? And this one. Stephanie, which one would you say looks better? Which one was handled better?
error.
Exactly. Exactly. So in this case, even if we commented this out and we add this and we even add a normal divided by 3, let's see how it's going to deal with that. It's also going to do what? It's going to say the result is 4. This time, it has also removed the okay from it. It has destructured it and removed the okay from it. So this is more like the best way of handling these results and these errors without using the unwrap or using unwrap or default. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't use unwrap or default, but be careful when you are using it. Be sure of the reason you are using it. Instead of you to be confused as to why you are using it, you can basically just use the match for whatever you want to do. Do we all get it now? Or are there more questions? Okay, I guess this person must have gotten his answer since I've explained the enum data type. Yeah. So moving on, we'll be talking about another type of enum. Remember, when we started talking about enums, we started talking about the results enum. Now, another type of enum is the option enum. Just like the results enum, the option enum also contains two different variants. That is, it has two elements inside of the enum. It has the sum and the none. So let's write an example. In fact, it's only nice if we use division as the example we'll be using for this. So we're going to say divide 2. In this time, but this time, we are using an option enum to deal with it. So this is how to define an option enum. So how do you define an option enum? Let's say if B is not equal to 0, we want to say sum A divided by B. Everyone goes home happy. Else, we want to say none. So just like the result enum has okay and error, the option enum also have some and none. What does some means? Some means that the value you are expecting arrived. None means that the value you are expecting does not exist. So it's another way of handling certain scenarios. Now, in the scenario we are handling, we are using division by 0. And in this case, it could be another example whereby it's not an error, rather it's a non-value. So the non-value, you could also use an option enum to handle this. In this case, you will just return a none. In JavaScript, you can think of it as a null value, just like you would have a non-value here. You can think of it in JavaScript as a null value for those coming from the Web 2 background. So how do you do this? The same way, let's comment this. Let's comment this. And yeah. So the same way, let's say let's result equals divide 2. And this time we are having 10 and 0. So instead of it to panic, this time around, I'm not just going to console log it. Instead, I'm going to destructure it well using the match. So I'm going to start by saying match the results. And inside of it, compare the two results we have. The first one is a sum value. And let's name this one res. So we will then print out the results. If there is a sum value there, we would say the result of the division is, and then we add this, and then we add this phrase from this destructured sum. And then we move on to the other one, none. And if it is none, we can also say print division number not divisible by 0. And at this point, everyone goes home happy. So I'm going to clear this and we are going to run it. Can we see? Number not divisible by 0. Using this option enum, we've also handled the situation. Let's say we are not even trying to, destructure it using the match. Let's try to see what would happen if we are just trying to print out this option enum when we know the result for it would be none. So what does it give to us? Let's clear this and cargo run it. Can you see? The result is none. But now because we destructured and we handled that none very well, we were able to say it should tell us the number is not divisible by 0, basically, if it is a non-value. So in this case, if we commented this, or let's uncomment it and let's make this one a 2, and we run our code, we are going to say the result is sum 5. But then, what happens if we try to use unwrap here? Would it work well? The answer is yes. It will unwrap it and tell us the answer, the result is 5. But then, Let's try to change this one to 0 and see what happens. Can you see? The thread panicked. Why? We are trying to unwrap a non-value. Is it possible to unwrap a non-value? No. Can we see from here? Can we see from here? Execution failed because we are trying to unwrap a non-value. That is why it is always important to use the match to what? To destructure properly without using. In fact, if it's possible, try to avoid the unwrap. Just try to avoid the unwrap and just undo your error or your results or your option enum with the match keyword, and then you'll be far away from troubles, trust me. So that is literally it on the results and the option enums. We have 3 minutes more. Are there any questions before we wrap up our class for today? Yeah, Stephanie, please.
So,
Sorry, I can't hear you.
the result, when should we use the option?
When should you use the result? When should you use the option? Great question. You should use the result when you are expecting an error. Did you get that? You should use the result when you are expecting an error. Yes, you can think of it as solely meant for handling error. Yes, for results and option, it's used for handling errors. But it's nice for you to understand that actually it makes sense for you to use the result when you know the error you are expecting. Or even if you don't know the error you are expecting, you know you are expecting an error. So you can use the result to capture that error. But now you can use the non-value when you are trying to access a data that is not there. Or you are trying to return a data that is not available. Now, it's not returning an error, but the data is not available. It's a non-value. Now, in JavaScript, you can think of it as a null value. You can think of it as undefined in JavaScript. So when you are expecting those kind of values and you are not sure whether it's going to be a null value, an undefined value, or whatever, at that scenario, you can use an option enum. But then when you are trying to undo an error, you can basically undo an error using what? Using the results enum. Does that answer your question, Stephanie?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yeah. Any more questions? Okay. If there are no questions, before I move on to handing over the class back to IJ, what we'll be discussing tomorrow first would be struct. It would be struct. But before we discuss struct, I want to give an assignment. And here's the assignment. I want you all to create a function. In fact, I want you to create 3 different functions. Now, in my own case, I created 3 different functions that had to do with divide. Now, I want you all to create 3 different functions. One, the first function should not use a result or an option. 2, the second function should use a result. 3, the third function should use an option enum. Now, you can think of any implementation you like. In my own case, I use division whereby 0 is not divisible, by any number. Now you can think out of the box. Think of anything that comes to your mind. But I want you to implement the same thing using these three functions. And then for you to submit, I want you to write the code and put it in a GitHub gist. I know I've not spoken about GitHub gist. It's also part of the research for you to do. So put it in a GitHub gist link and send the link to the Telegram group. So now you can submit through the Telegram group there, or, okay, there's a question. Okay, you want to get the question on it. Did you not understand the question I just said? The question is for you to create three different functions. The first function will be a normal function. The three function does the same thing. But the difference between these three functions is that the first function does not undo any error or any situation. The second function uses a result enum to undo the errors and the situations. Then the third function using an option enum to undo whether it's a sum value or it's a non-value. So those are the three functions you are going to create, and you're going to put it in a GitHub gist. I didn't say you should create a repository, put it in a GitHub gist, and then send the link to the Telegram. So I'll be stopping here. You can think of any implementation you like and just implement it. I'm not going to tie you for you to do something certain. Just think out of the box based on everything we have been learning in this class. So you can just think of something interesting for you to create. So thank you very much, everyone, for the time to discuss in today's class. Look forward to seeing you all tomorrow with your assignment already submitted before tomorrow, because I'll definitely go through it today. So I'll be handing over the class back to IJ. So IJ, are you there?
Yes.
We have a question. Someone is raising his hand. Yeah, please.
Okay, my question is, is there any way we can maybe have access to the code you used to used for hands-on exercises during the class? Like, you know, can just go through it on our something like that.
So you want to have access to all of this? This
Yeah.
quite gibberish. That's why I've not. Okay. I'll just, okay, know what will happen. I'll just uncomment all of this, and I'm going to basically send it to a GitHub gist, and I'll send it to the group, to the
Okay.
Telegram.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Do you have anyone with more questions? We are good to go. Where is the link? The link you submitted on the Telegram channel under the Stellar DevCamp chat. I hope that question is answered. Any more questions? Is anyone raising their hands? No. Okay. So that is the end of our session. And guys, yesterday I requested all of you to post using the necessary posters just to tell the world that you're undergoing this, but I've not seen any posts yet. I don't know what's going on, what's happening. It'd be nice if some of you post about the classes. I do post about the recap just to create content and build up momentum. This is easy, and this will largely help us to be able to organize the residency we are planning after all these cohorts are done, monthly cohorts, which we feel it's beneficial for everyone to be able to like do a hackathon at the end of the day so that you can showcase your skill set to the world. And it's also nice when you post, it's easy for people to know who to hire when they're looking for skill set, because Web3 it's very funny. people hire you based on your socials, mostly Twitter, because that's how I got my first job. So keep posting, tell the world what you're doing. Don't be a silent developer. Yeah, exactly. So I'm hoping to see your nice posts. Please increase the engagement on a Telegram chat so that I don't talk to myself most of the time, because I just talk to myself, which is not really good. Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, so please do that, post, talk about it. Yeah, and see you guys tomorrow. Have a good one.